Imagine Bellheart after the last shop has closed. The little doors set into its bells are dark, the ropes have stopped swaying, and rain from Greymore can be heard somewhere beyond the western tunnel. High above the town, Hornet has a bell home of her own. It is a strange place to sleep. The walls were cast to ring, so every small movement returns as a softened note. A map of Farloom rests nearby, covered with the lines of a kingdom that climbs far beyond the ceiling and sinks much farther beneath the floor. Some paths have been drawn in clean white ink. Others exist only as memories, sealed nests, poisoned drains, or rooms that refuse to fit where a map says they should. Tonight we are going to unfold that map slowly and travel through every area of Hollow Knight. Silksong. We will follow the land rather than rush the plot, beginning in the moss where Hornet falls, passing through settlements, hunting grounds, drowned farms, prisons, archives, and the Golden City at the summit, then descending to the place even Farloom tried to forget. Each region will have time to breathe. We will look at who built it, what work happened there, what the Citadel took from it, and why returning later can make a familiar room feel like a different country. If calm journeys through imaginary worlds help you settle at night, you are welcome to leave a like or subscribe before we set out. After that, there is nothing to keep track of. Chakra can hold the quill. We only need the next lamp. Farloom is easiest to understand as a kingdom arranged by pressure. At the top, the Citadel sings, governs, consumes, and sends its waste downward. At the bottom, old shells carry the roads, furnaces feed the city, and pilgrims begin climbing toward a reward almost none of them can describe. The map is vertical, but its history is not a simple rise from poverty to holiness. Ancient powers once occupied the western heights and eastern fields. Weavers built nests at several levels. Tribes survived beyond the city before its first golden wall existed. The farther Hornet travels, the clearer it becomes that high ground is not the same thing as moral ground. Moss Grotto is where that understanding begins, though the place itself asks for very little. Hornet wakes at the bottom after her rune cage breaks, and drops her away from the envoys carrying her. The cave is green, wet, and largely secluded from the Citadel's influence. Lime-colored moss covers stone. Clear pools sit beneath hanging leaves. Mossmeres and small burrowing creatures belong to the growth instead of marching under a religious command. After Hallownest's dead crossroads and Farloom's violent introduction, the grotto gives Hornet a few rooms where standing up is the main achievement. The calm was added for exactly that purpose. Early plans would have begun in a smaller, darker place called the Bone Church, closer in mood to the harsher lowlands. Moss Grotto replaced it when the opening needed room for Hornet's speed and unusual movement to feel natural. That development history happens to suit the finished lore. Hornet has been stolen from one kingdom and dropped into another. Before Farloom tells her what it wants, the moss lets her remember how her own body moves. A huge central pit gives the grotto its hidden scale. It rises through the cavern containing Bone Bottom and continues toward the blasted steps far above. The opening is a vertical wound through several layers of the kingdom, linking the softest lowland cave to a desert scoured by the wasteland. Hornet cannot simply climb it from the beginning. Farloom may be vertically connected, but access depends on knowledge, tools, and paths built by lives that came before her. The western side of Moss Grotto is greener and more alive. Toward the east, plants thin and the underlying bone becomes easier to see. This gradual change prevents the starting region from feeling like a sealed garden. The grotto is already leaning toward the marrow, the skeletal foundation beneath much of Falun. Water and moss have softened the surface, but the kingdom is standing on ancient remains even here. At the top sits the ruined chapel. Spiral symbols survive beneath moss, and the chapel maid continues caring for a congregation that left long ago. Those worshippers abandoned an older faith and joined the pilgrimage toward the citadel. Nobody needed to burn the chapel or smash its altar. A stronger promise emptied it. That is how religious conquest often appears in Falun, not as one dramatic battle, but as a road becoming crowded in one direction, while a caretaker waits beside rooms that no longer fill. Moss Mother has turned the lower chapel into a nest. Her presence makes the ruin feel less dead than repurposed. Sacred architecture has become shelter for local life, to the chapel maid's frustration. Hornet's first substantial confrontation therefore takes place in a room with several histories at once. It was built for prayer, abandoned for a newer religion, occupied by moss creatures, and opened again by an outsider who needs the passage above. The chapel changes in the last act. Snail shamans gather inside after events at the citadel have broken Falun's old order. Their arrival does not restore the original congregation, but it returns a non-citadel power to the building. The same room that first appears to be a forgotten threshold becomes the place from which Hornet enters her own red memory. Moss Grotto starts the journey as a gentle accident. Much later, it becomes a deliberate doorway into lineage. East of the grotto waits Weavenest Atla, sealed behind a door that answers the Needlin. It is the only Weavenest granted a separate named map, and it was the largest of the 5 known nests built across Falun. Atla was the weaver associated with time. Her nest combined home and workshop. Weavers tested tools, traps, and bindings there, while searching for some way to loosen Grandmother Silk's hold over them. The change in architecture is immediate. Moss gives way to designed stone, dense silk, power mechanisms, lamps, and a lift connecting upper and lower halls. The nest remains dark until its power room is restored. Then old systems answer, as though the builders only stepped away a moment ago. This creates an eerie form of abandonment. A ruin whose machinery still works has not fully accepted that its makers are gone. Atla's western rooms have been overtaken by the neighboring grotto. Water covers fossilized floors. Moss Mears and Moss Mothers have crossed into Weaver space, turning precise corridors into another habitat. The northeast remains comparatively untouched, preserving the artificial character of the nest. Walking between those halves is like crossing the argument at the heart of Falun. One side trusts design, thread, and control. The other shows what life does after control leaves. Servitors called Ignim continue waiting for the weavers. Eva remains within an iron shell, born as a constructed helper, but capable of carrying memories and judgment. Through her, the nest speaks less like an archaeological site and more like a household whose children were never collected. Eva remembers Weaver desperation as they made small devices in preparation for larger forms of resistance. Every attempt failed. The tools survived more readily than the freedom they were meant to secure. Atla also places Hornet in an uncomfortable relation to ancestry. She can recognize Weavercraft because it belongs to her blood, but she did not grow up in Falun, and did not share the history that gave the devices their purpose. The nest treats her as both descendant and stranger. Its silk answers her. Its grief does not automatically become hers. This distinction will matter throughout the kingdom, where many bugs want lineage to dictate what hornet must become. Above Moss Grotto is Bone Bottom, the first settlement and the gentlest expression of pilgrimage. Tents stand among giant pieces of shell and bone. The town looks temporary, though Pilby explains that it has served passing bugs for longer than anyone remembers. That contradiction suits a pilgrimage camp. Each individual plans to leave, yet the camp itself persists, because there will always be another traveler needing food, repairs, and somewhere to sit. The name sounds bleak until the town begins to move. Peb sells practical goods. Flick maintains the wish wall. Pilgrims talk about the citadel with fear, confidence, or exhausted faith. A bellway station hints at travel systems no ordinary pilgrim believes they should use. Bone Bottom is poor in gold and rich in needs. Its first great lesson is that a community becomes visible through the things it asks someone to repair. The wish wall fills with work that the citadel's theology barely notices. Mossberries must be gathered. A bridge would make the central chasm safer. Lost fleas need finding. Supplies, garments, and tools matter because bodies must survive before souls can complete a sacred climb. Flick's repairs have more immediate mercy than any command issued from the summit. She does not promise transcendence. She makes the next crossing less likely to kill someone. After the Bell Beast is freed, the wall can be rebuilt and the station comes alive. The improvement does not transform Bone Bottom into a grand town. It simply allows a little more movement. Later, when Act 3 sends destruction through the kingdom, survivors gather in the marrow rather than pretending the old settlement remains untouched. Bone Bottom has a history in stages: hopeful camp, working hub, wounded community. Its value lies in the people, so the location can survive even when its arrangement changes. Mossholm rises northeast of town. It once offered rest and healing to pilgrims, built around a weaver burial spire whose thread protected the settlement. The weaver may have been Kimura, remembered for healing. Her presence made care feel almost woven into the place. Yet the weavers also introduced Mossholm's bugs to the citadel's religion and persuaded them to begin the climb. The same thread that healed them helped redirect their faith. By Hornet's arrival, Mossholm has fallen to the haunting. Overgrown pilgrims move through its paths, and the moss druid tends another kind of wisdom among berries and old growth. The settlement's ruin complicates any easy division between benevolent weavers and a cruel mother. Weaver healing was real, so was weaver rule. In Farloom, gifts often arrive tied to a direction the receiver did not choose. Bonegrave lies west beyond the old chapel. It is a cemetery for Bone Bottom's dead and for pilgrims who could not complete their ascent. The size of the graveyard gives quiet numerical weight to the pilgrimage. The road is preached as sacred progress, but many bodies never rise beyond its first settlement. Their graves remain near those preparing to follow. Within Bonegrave stands the Chapel of the Wanderer. Claiming the Wanderer crest requires surviving a series of pilgrims who rise around the chapel. The rune turns wandering into something sterner than freedom. Here, the word describes someone who continues after maps, institutions, or ordinary protection have failed. Bonegrave gives that identity beside evidence of how often continuation ends. The Mosslands share a map color because Moss Grotto and Bone Bottom belong to the same ecological refuge. The citadel has touched them, particularly through pilgrimage and weaver history, but it has not industrialized the water or filled the air with exhaust. Green is still allowed to be ordinary here. Later regions will make that ordinary color feel almost luxurious. The marrow begins where the moss can no longer hide the bones. It is the first large crossroads of the lowlands, built through the shells of creatures so enormous that their remains have become architecture. Ribs form passages. Skull-like chambers rise around roads and scaffolds. Heat glows below. Chakra describes the region as the fragile foundation beneath the entire kingdom, and the more one looks, the less that sounds metaphorical. Pilgrim statues stand above lava, while living pilgrims struggle along paths assembled from death. The citadel's road uses whatever existed before it, including bodies too old for anyone to name. The marrow therefore introduces Farloom's habit of claiming ancient material and giving it a religious function. A shell becomes a bridge, a ruin becomes a chapel, a captive beast becomes transportation. Nothing is permitted to remain outside service for long. The bell beast is found bound within this skeletal country. Silk restrains a creature associated with the bellways, leaving it furious and unable to perform the movement for which the kingdom later depends on it. Hornet first meets the beast through danger, then frees it. Afterward, it carries her between stations. The relationship changes the meaning of the transport network. What looks like infrastructure is partly a living body agreeing to run. Bellways are gilded veins through Farloom. Stations appear from Bone Bottom to distant heights, each one marked by bells and old mechanisms. Ordinary pilgrims refuse such easy movement because they have been taught that walking and climbing prove devotion. The rule keeps the faithful visible on roads and ensures hardship remains part of worship. Hornet, who never agreed to the pilgrimage, accepts help from the beast. Her freedom begins with declining a burden that authority called virtuous. The marrow holds the first meetings with several paths that will later spread apart. Deep Docks burns to the east. Hunter's March guards a more dangerous route above. Mossholm reaches back toward Green Refuge. The road north eventually points toward Bellheart. This makes the area feel like a station built before any station building arrived. Travelers pass through, fighters test themselves, and the bones bear everyone without asking where they intend to end. Chakra's presence gives this unfamiliar map a personal rhythm. Her song can be heard before she is seen, turning navigation into recognition. She does not hand over a magically complete chart. Her maps provide a beginning, and Hornet's quill records explored rooms after rest. Geography becomes collaboration between another traveler's knowledge and Hornet's own memory. Blank spaces are not mistakes, they are invitations with edges. Bone Bottom's survivors later establish a camp in the marrow. The crossroads becomes shelter after the town below can no longer serve safely. This is a modest but revealing change. The marrow was built from dead giants and religious roads, yet ordinary bugs can still claim a room for blankets and supplies. Farloom's structures are powerful, but people continue finding domestic uses inside them. The region also carries an echo from Hollow Knight's development history. Its fiery bones grew from the Forest of Bones, an area once imagined for Hallownest and never used there. In Silksong, it became one of the earliest substantial pieces of Farloom. That old abandoned idea fits the marrow perfectly. A design left as a skeleton in one kingdom, became the foundation of another. Deep Docks lies east of the Marrow, where the bones meet industry. Lava fills lower chambers, metal platforms cross molten gaps, and workers remain at stations built to extract what the citadel needs. This is not a port beside water. It is a dock over fire, complete with lifts, furnaces, scaffolds, and a diving bell that will eventually descend below the volcanic floor. The citadel built the docks to harvest rare materials. Much of Farloom's metal was smelted there. Flintstone, a fuel that burns for extraordinary lengths of time, was mined and sent upward for forges and machinery. Smoker rock and sweet smelt also passed through local hands. The beautiful city at the summit did not produce its own gold, heat, or moving parts. Deep Docks supplied the physical appetite behind the holy image. Four brothers Cygnus and Gron command workers who have fallen under the haunting. They continue laboring after purpose has collapsed into compulsion. The docks are loud enough that this can initially look like ordinary industry. Bodies shovel, carry, and tend furnaces. Only their inability to stop reveals the curse. Endless labor does not need ghostly silence to feel haunted. Forge Daughter belongs to an ancient smithing line and serves the docks in exchange for honor promised to her forge home. Her bargain shows how the citadel absorbed independent crafts. It did not need to destroy every tradition. It could offer recognition, attach the artisan to its supply chain, and then present the resulting work as part of sacred order. Skill remained personal. The destination of that skill became political. Ballo provides another practical presence among the fire. He understands the diving bell and eventually repairs it for the descent into the abyss. His work connects Farloom's industrial middle to its oldest depth. A vessel built in the language of metal and pressure becomes the only route toward a place older than the citadel, the weavers, and perhaps the kingdom itself. Lace appears in the docks as a figure who moves easily through spaces that exhaust everyone else. Her white dress and gilded pin stand apart from soot, dark metal, and red heat. The contrast is not decorative. She belongs to the system above, while meeting Hornet among the people and materials beneath it. Their duel places elegance on a factory floor and asks which of them is truly at home there. Far below the visible forge, the lake of lava hides more structure than the first map suggests. Chakra senses the dock's true bulk beneath it. Later access confirms that the facility extends into depths the upper platforms only hint at. This is a repeated pattern in Farloom. The portion shown to pilgrims and visitors is rarely the portion doing the hardest work. In the final act, Deep Docks becomes the staging ground for a journey in the opposite direction from the pilgrimage. Hornet does not climb toward promised light. She enters the repaired diving bell and sinks through heat into darkness. The same region that supplied the citadel's future opens a route to the world's prehistory. Fire is not the deepest element after all. Southwest of the Marrow, the wormways offer a less deliberate underground. Their tunnels are dark, narrow, sandy, and continuously disturbed by groms moving through the earth. Fossil remains form much of the terrain, perhaps belonging to older groms or related creatures. In Deep Docks, danger comes from organized labor around controlled heat. Here the ground itself has never accepted stillness. Gromlings appear before their larger kin, small enough to make the burrowing seem almost harmless. A full grom changes that impression by turning a corridor into a temporary prediction. Dust and vibration announce movement. Then a body tears through the root. The worms do not guard ideology or treasure. They occupy a nest that the pilgrim road abandoned long ago. Faint evidence suggests pilgrims once passed through these caverns, including remnants of a bell shrine. The road likely failed because no amount of doctrine could stabilize Earth continuously remade by hungry bodies. Falum's religion teaches that hardship proves faith, but institutions still abandon routes when maintenance costs more than the travelers using them. Alchemist xylitol studies plasmium in a northern laboratory. Its blue life-bearing substance introduces a softer growth among the sand and teeth. Plasmium buds can sustain unusual creatures and later become more prominent when void changes the kingdom. The laboratory is not attached to a grand academy. It is a practical room inside an infestation, kept by someone curious enough to work where the subject naturally grows. Weavenest Cairn is hidden at the far western edge, another attempt by the weavers to occupy a difficult environment. Worms have invaded its empty passages. Reaching its burial spire allows Hornet to bind Sharp Dart, inheriting a method from makers who could not keep their workshop intact. Cairn and Atla tell different versions of Weaver absence. Atla waits under silk and machinery. Cairn has been chewed into the local ecology. A locked passage through the wormways can lead upward to Shellwood or down into Bonegrave. That connection makes the tunnels an alternate artery through the lower map. Someone willing to spend a key and endure the unstable route can reach places without following the intended pilgrimage. Falum rewards the refusal to assume that the obvious road is the only road. The area's own history contains a strange absence. Earlier in development, these caverns were a lush clover region. Pieces of that lost idea survived elsewhere, especially in Verdania, while the wormways took over its physical position. Nothing in the finished world announces the substitution. Still, there is something fitting about green memory giving way to tunnels full of fossils. Even the map's making carries buried strata. North and east of the Marrow, Hunter's March belongs to the Scar. The Red Ant tribe predates Grandmother Silk and the Citadel. Their territory is not marked by a palace. It is marked by preparation. Covered pits, sickles, cages, thorn fields, concealed scouts, and paths built for hunters who know which patch of earth will open beneath them. Tiny ants retrieve loose rosaries, shell shards, and the bodies of fallen Scar. Their work makes the march feel communal, even when every warrior treats Hornet as an intruder. Nothing useful is allowed to remain on the ground. Nothing dead is ignored. The tribe's territory operates through small collective motions as much as through large fighters. The march is deliberately exhausting. Long sections offer no easy place to rest, so entering early can feel like stepping into a country that has not agreed to receive visitors. Chakra may appear during an ambush and help if Hornet has not yet reached the upper lowlands. Her intervention feels natural because the cartographer is also a warrior. Mapping dangerous territory means understanding when observation must become action. Gilly studies the Scar because they retain more of themselves under the haunting than other bugs. Their anchor may be social rather than magical. They are bound to hunting practice, territory, and a song that existed before the Citadel's call. Grandmother Silk can reach their bodies, but she does not encounter empty lives waiting for purpose. The Scar already know what they are. The chapel of the beast is built from sharp bone around a captive savage beast fly. Its thrashing shakes the structure before Hornet sees the animal. Claiming the beast crest means surviving the creature and binding an identity made from direct appetite. The chapel's title is honest. It does not disguise the beast as a saint. It asks whether Hornet can use ferocity without surrendering thought to it. Hunter's March is only the border of Scar territory. Their wider home stretches into the far fields, a set of enormous grassy caverns shaped by wind. Updrafts lift leaves, cloth, and anyone able to ride them. The drifter's cloak turns air from scenery into a road, allowing Hornet to rise through spaces that seemed empty on the first visit. Lava still fills the lowest sections, connecting the fields to deep docks and the Marrow's heat. Above it, green pasture spreads across stone. Long ago, enormous creatures walked here. Their skulls remain large enough to shelter travelers. The present grass does not erase the age of the bones beneath it. It makes that age easier to overlook. The seamstress lives in the fields and helps create the drifter's cloak after Hornet gathers flexible spines. Sewing becomes a form of environmental knowledge. Rather than defeating the wind, Hornet wears something that cooperates with it. Farloom's best tools often come from residents who understand a region's habits better than the institutions that exploit it. Pilgrim's Rest offers a pause within the broad caverns. The name sounds comforting, but every resting place on the pilgrimage carries the question of who will continue. Some bugs are too tired, frightened, or injured to treat stopping as temporary. The wind keeps rising past them toward Greymoor, indifferent to whether faith rises with it. The fourth chorus lies beneath rubble near lava. It is a towering machine sent by the Citadel, likely to hunt the seamstress. Her pin remains embedded in its neck after she defeated it. When the construct awakens, the local struggle becomes visible. A craftswoman in the lowlands, resisting a machine from above, each side built around skilled making, but serving opposite forms of power. In Act 3, the northeastern fields open into deeper Scar history. Scar singer Carmelita survives there, frail with age. Her voice once united the Red Hunters and helped them resist Grandmother Silk. The vegetation of the fields is tied to her presence, making song a source of growth before the Citadel turned it into endless duty. Hornet can enter the memory of Carmelita's strength and claim the hunter's heart. The region's past is not found in a book. It is heard through the body that once held the tribe together. Sprintmaster Swift also waits in the skull of a giant creature and offers a race rather than a sermon. His challenge gives the eastern edge a playful pulse after all the ancient conflict. Farloom is full of bugs who have built complete lives around one discipline: mapping, forging, cooking, racing, hunting. They make the kingdom feel inhabited because their interests do not always bend toward its central tragedy. The far fields provide the main ascent into Greymoor. Hornet rides an updraft through a long vertical passage, leaving warm grass for cold rain. The shift is one of Farloom's finest geographic transitions. No gate announces a new social class. Moisture gathers, light dims, and open wind becomes weather. Greymoor is vast, damp, and tired. Rain falls inside caverns broad enough to create their own climate. Pools collect around ruined towers. Craws nest in roofs and broken structures. Mites move through fields that once supported agriculture. The moor is not wilderness untouched by the Citadel. It is a work district whose function has become difficult to recognize under neglect. Before the haunting, keepers used Greymore as farmland. Later, the citadel ordered workers to collect silk dregs that fell from above. Dreg catchers gathered thread with hooked staffs. Thread rakers rolled it. Silk snippers cut and prepared spools for return to the city. The whole landscape became a net beneath the citadel, catching material too valuable to let disappear into mud. Those workers continue their motions after the haunting. They rake, catch, and cut for a city that no longer receives them properly. Rain soaks their uniforms. Towers decay around their stations. Their labor is tragic because it remains competent. They have not forgotten the gesture, only the ability to choose whether it should continue. The Moorwing was bred large to catch workers who fled. After its handlers died, it continued hunting tenders and pilgrims. A creature designed to enforce labor survives the workplace that justified its breeding. Greymoor's ruin did not free everyone from its old discipline. Some forms of discipline had teeth and wings. Halfway home is the region's most important refuge. Kriege maintains the building with the weary practicality of someone who knows a roof and a meal can matter more than grand hope. Travelers meet there because the moor is too large to cross without rest. The name is intentionally vague. Halfway to the citadel, halfway out of danger, halfway through a life spent climbing, each visitor can borrow the answer needed for one night. Craw Lake opens in the far east, surrounded by towers and the movements of birds that have made the region their own. It later conceals the route to Verdania. The lake first appears as a remote edge, then becomes a border between present ruin and a kingdom preserved in memory. Greymoor is full of these hidden thresholds, because mist and distance make forgetting easy. The Chapel of the Reaper gives the moor another identity to bind. Its form is associated with long, sweeping attacks and the harvesting imagery already surrounding the workers. Reaping can mean gathering what has grown, but in Greymoor, almost everything gathered belongs to someone above. The crest takes an agricultural gesture and returns it to Hornet as personal skill. The flea caravan may settle in the central moor after enough lost members are recovered. Bright tents and music look almost defiant beneath endless rain. The caravan does not repair Greymoor's towers or release its workers. It creates temporary joy in an available clearing. Nomadic life becomes a genuine alternative to both the fixed town and the compulsory pilgrimage. Styx keeps to the upper roads with an existence as strange and tenacious as the insects around him. Yarnaby works from a bell home. New appears with her own fascination for dangerous creatures. Garmund and Zaza repeatedly cross Hornet's path in pursuit of heroic purpose. Greymoor accommodates all of them because its scale prevents any single story from owning the reign. Hidden above the western towers is Wisp Thicket, one of the smallest areas and one of the easiest to miss on the world map. It is dark, lush, and warm with moving flame. The burning bugs live among red tents and hanging bags, controlling or calling the short-lived wisps that ignite as they fly. The warmth is not gentle once its source becomes clear. Pilgrims were burned, their remains stored in sacks throughout the thicket. The local faith looks toward immolation as a way to join a flame god. Father of the Flame is a constructed totem with an old burning bug housed at its center, carrying the community's desire to become fire rather than simply worship it. After the totem burns, surviving devotees immolate themselves and transform into wisps. Their belief appears to work, which makes the practice more unsettling rather than less. A true transformation does not answer whether the choice was wise, freely made, or shaped by years in a secluded cult. Farloom's supernatural realities rarely simplify its moral questions. Even the bench is trapped inside a hanging bag and must be knocked free. Rest itself has been packaged among the remains. Wisp thicket makes almost every comforting object ambiguous. Warm light hunts, faith burns, a quiet thicket hides sacrifice, and a bench resembles something that should not be opened. East of Greymore is Bellheart, built within the bell vein running through Farloom's core. Homes occupy bells large enough to become rooms. Smaller bells provide useful material and decoration. The town's curves, ropes, and metallic walls make it feel as though a single great note was divided into a neighborhood. Bellheart is the last friendly stop before the citadel. Pilgrims arrive from Greymore or Shellwood, rest, gather supplies, and prepare for the blasted steppes. Its position gives the town an economy based on people who are leaving. Shops, couriers, relic seekers, pinmasters, and a wish wall grow around passage. A settlement made from bells survives by serving those called by a larger bell above. On the first arrival, Bellheart may be haunted Bellheart. Residents hang from threads inside their own town, buildings closed and voices absent. Widow, a weaver loyal to Grandmother Silk, has guided haunted Silk into the bell vein and offered its people to the mother. The safest town in the Middle Kingdom has become a suspended congregation. Widow herself carries punishment in her body. Her mask was removed, and heavy pins bind her silk. She remained loyal after other weavers fled, which did not protect her from cruelty. When Hornet defeats her, Bellheart is released, and the Needlin passes into Hornet's keeping. Song has imprisoned the town, but a different use of music begins opening sealed memories and mechanisms across the map. Freedom does not restore everyone. Many residents die when the threads are broken, and the town reopens with fewer voices. Shops lift their shutters around empty bell homes. This gives Bellheart's recovery an honesty rare in enchanted settlements. The curse can end without returning the morning before it began. As wishes are completed, the town recognizes Hornet with a bell home. Frey can furnish it, and a bed allows Hornet to rest more deeply than an ordinary bench. For a character defined by movement between inherited kingdoms, owning one small room is surprisingly tender. The bell home does not ask her to rule, guard, or complete a lineage. It gives her a key. Act 3 damages Bellheart again. Background homes shatter as the kingdom's crisis reaches the vein. The accessible community survives, but its skyline carries new gaps. Bellheart's repeated injuries prevent it from becoming a perfect hub, protected by narrative convenience. It remains a town in the same country as every collapsing road. West of Bellheart, Shellwood grows around water, thorn, pollen, and hard pale roots. It was created and once protected by Nyleth, an ancient plant power whose influence made the forest comparatively safe for travelers. The citadel rose beside a region it could not easily dominate, and reluctantly honored Nyleth with a shrine near the Grand Gate. After her presence faded, Sister Splinter and her kin spread through the wood. Splinters, wasps, gnats, and predatory plants turned beauty into a set of close hazards. Shellwood never becomes ugly. Its flowers and pools remain inviting, while almost every surface threatens to catch or cut. This is nature after its guardian has withdrawn, neither evil nor obliged to remain convenient. Pond catchers once hunted pond skippers to feed Bellheart. Most later fell under the haunting, leaving Reed as a reminder that the lovely pond also supported a food chain between neighbouring communities. Bellheart did not live on bells alone. Someone crossed thorny water and brought dinner home. Greyroot waits within the forest near a chapel associated with the Twisted Bud. Travellers brought offerings and did not return. Root, silk, and desire become entangled there in a curse that can alter Hornet's fate at the cradle. Shellwood's oldest life is protective in one place and consuming in another. A forest large enough to have a god is also large enough to have hungers nobody governs. A weaver burial spire, likely belonging to Keelal, preserves the cling grip. Keelal was associated with paths and protection for weak or sinful travellers. Binding the technique allows Hornet to hold flat walls and climb with startling speed. The ability changes every earlier area because vertical surfaces cease to be boundaries. A dead weaver's idea of safe passage becomes Hornet's freedom to ignore the routes Farloom assigned. Nyleth returns through memory in Act 3. Entering the old heart of Shellwood reveals the forest when its ruler's strength was present. The pollen heart carries more than natural power. It carries evidence that the region once had its own center before the citadel's summit became the answer to every prayer. Shellwood is therefore both a surviving forest and the faded edge of an older kingdom. East of Bellheart, the road loses nearly all of Shellwood's shelter. The blasted steps are exposed terraces of pale stone, blowing sand, and the remains of a river that no longer runs. Pilgrims who have crossed moss, bone, rain, and thorn reach this place believing the citadel must be close. It is. They can see its impossible height. Yet the last approach is designed to make nearness exhausting. The wind is the first ruler of the steps. It presses across open ground, lifts sand into the air, and turns a straightforward climb into a struggle for every ledge. There are few comfortable walls and fewer signs of ordinary life. Hornet has already learned to use the warm currents of the far fields, but here the air does not offer help so willingly. She must wait, lean into it, and choose the moment when a jump will carry rather than return her. This desert was not always dry. The Order of Carrack once lived among rivers and coral farther east, and the blasted steppes belonged to that older water system. What now resembles bleached masonry may be the skeleton of a landscape stripped of its source. As the citadel rose, its appetite changed the country beneath it, drawing wealth, labour, silk, water, and worship uphill until whole regions survived as residue. Sand carvers move under the loose ground, almost invisible until they break the surface. Their hunting suits a road where attention is already pulled toward the summit. Other creatures cling to the stone or ride the weather. None needs to understand pilgrimage in order to profit from it. A sacred road gathers predators as surely as it gathers shrines. The judges give that danger an official face. They occupy the final ascent and decide which travellers are worthy to continue. Pilgrims were told to leave weapons behind, travel without vanity, and accept hardship as proof of repentance. By the time they meet a judge, they are tired, poorly equipped, and trained to interpret abuse as holy examination. The road has prepared them to cooperate with their own rejection. At the top waits the last judge, immense and solemn before the grand gate. Her title sounds judicial, but the trial is physical. Hornet is not invited to explain her purpose. She must survive the verdict. Once the judge falls and the gate remains closed, the entire promise of the steps becomes plain. Obedience never guaranteed entry. The institution reserved the right to demand everything and still say no. Beyond the main road, the sands of Karak preserve the source of this desolation. Coral formations rise from dunes, like reefs remembering a vanished tide. Their shapes seem oceanic even beneath a dry sky, and that contradiction makes the region feel stranded in its own past. Sand moves where water once moved. The old channels remain, but the substance passing through them has changed. The Order of Karak ruled here before Grandmother Silk remade Farloom. Its most famous sovereign, Crust King Khan, controlled much of the kingdom and resisted her advance longer than most. The surviving account does not turn him into a gentle defender. Khan was a tyrant with his own appetite for dominion. The old Farloom was not an innocent paradise waiting to be ruined by one invader. It contained powers that could oppose the mother because they also knew how to command. Karak's coral tower stood over clear water during that age. When Hornet enters its memory in Act 3, the dunes recover movement and color. The tower does not appear as a dry archaeological diagram. It returns as inhabited space, allowing the Lost River Kingdom to exist for a little while without the dust of its ending. The encrusted heart found there carries the density of an age buried rather than erased. In the present, Karak is difficult to reach and easy to overlook. That isolation fits its history. The citadel teaches pilgrims that all meaningful roads lead upward, while Karak lies sideways from the route, holding evidence that other centers once existed. To enter it is to leave the official story and follow the shape of an absent river. North of the steps, cold replaces sand. Mount Fay rises along the outer edge of Farloom, a vertical country of snow, blue stone, and thin air. The mountain contains few ordinary enemies because the environment performs the work of one. Without protection, the cold steadily harms Hornet. Standing still becomes dangerous, yet climbing carelessly wastes the little warmth she has. Brightvein provides brief pockets of heat. A traveler can pause beside its glow, recover, and plan the next reach through the frost. These small refuges make the mountain less like a conventional road and more like a chain of breaths. Each warm point is visible proof that the next section can be attempted, though never proof that it will be easy. The weavers cut passages into Mount Fay and built a great tuning structure near its heights. They came here to commune with the Fayfawn, beings or forces associated with insight and death. Their work suggests that the mountain was never merely a border, it was an instrument. Stone, altitude, and vibration allowed questions to be placed where ordinary answers grew quiet. The mask maker lives in this severe country, away from towns and processions. Masks throughout these kingdoms are identity made physical. They can declare office, conceal injury, preserve a role, or become so familiar that the face beneath seems less real. A maker of masks living near the Fayfawn feels appropriate. Both trades approach the uncertain boundary between what a creature is and what it can be made to appear. At the summit, Hornet gains the Faydown cloak. The cloth protects her from lethal cold and changes descent into flight-like control. Mount Fay has asked for patience all the way up, then rewards the climb with a new relationship to falling. The mountain does not become smaller. Hornet simply leaves it knowing the air differently. The slab waits nearby, caught in the same bitter climate. From a distance it appears to be another holy structure attached to the citadel. Inside, it is a prison. Farloom calls it a place of forgiveness, which tells us more about Farloom than the word prison ever could. Forgiveness here means confinement until authority decides that punishment has purified whatever it first condemned. The cells hold pilgrims, workers, wanderers, and figures whose crimes are difficult to separate from disobedience. The Citadel's law could treat neglected duty, unwanted knowledge, or simple inconvenience as sin. 3 keys govern movement through the complex, placing freedom inside a small administrative ritual. A prisoner may be only a door away from open snow and still remain trapped by an object carried in someone else's pocket. Hornet can be taken to the slab and stripped of her possessions. The loss is temporary, but it changes the place from background cruelty into personal vulnerability. Her tools, rosaries, and carefully gathered resources sit elsewhere while she wakes inside the system. Escape requires reading the prison from below. Shafts, walls, guards, locks, and the habits of those who assume the building itself has already won. The first sinner waits in the depths. The title implies a beginning, but institutions often invent beginnings to make punishment look ancient and inevitable. Someone is named first, the story is repeated, and every later cell receives a little borrowed legitimacy. Whatever truth lies behind the prisoner, the slab has turned a life into a lesson for strangers. Snow enters even the open portions of the prison. The cold does not respect the difference between guard and captive, though only one of them may leave. This is one of the slab's quietest cruelties. Nature is harsh on everyone, and the institution arranges who must endure that harshness without shelter or choice. Southwest of the Citadel, another route carries a different kind of punishment. Sinner's Road runs from Greymoor toward Bylewater, through cages, refuse, and the breeding grounds of muckroaches. It is a working road, rather than a ceremonial ascent, built around the production of food for the moor. Where the blasted steps discipline pilgrims through grandeur, Sinner's Road disciplines workers through filth. Muckroaches reproduce quickly and yield meat tough enough to keep laborers alive. Their pens hang above foul water, while keepers patrol the route and maintain the harvest. The connection to Greymoor makes the system disturbingly ordinary. Meals at an inn or work camp do not arrive from nowhere. Behind them lies a wet corridor where somebody tends cages no traveller wants to see. Krull and Benjin have made a private life within this machinery. Their presence adds humour and affection to a region built from unpleasant labour. Farloom repeatedly allows warmth to survive in places that do not deserve it. That warmth does not excuse the surroundings. It shows how people construct companionship when the wider order gives them little else. Styx remains on the road with the unease of somebody shaped by long proximity to suffering. Lugoli adds another strange presence to the route. Encounters here rarely have the clean form of a town conversation. Voices rise from platforms, cages, and side chambers, while damp machinery works nearby. The road never lets its residents forget the function assigned to it. The passage toward the mist becomes less trustworthy with every step. Geography starts to loosen. A corridor can return a traveller to where it began, and familiar markers no longer promise a familiar destination. Sinner's Road has dealt in physical confinement. The mist continues the idea by making direction itself unreliable. Bylewater spreads below and beyond it, a swamp formed from the Citadel's waste. Long ago the region held clear ground inhabited by the Stilkin. The exhaust organ poured corruption down from above until water thickened, air soured, and local life adapted or died. The name Bilewater sounds like a natural warning, but the Bile has an address uphill. Stilkin survivors inhabit Bilehaven, carrying an older claim to a place outsiders now treat as a sewer. Their bodies and customs have changed alongside the swamp. Adaptation can look like belonging from a distance, yet the distinction matters. They did not choose pollution as an identity. They learned how to remain after another society made departure or transformation the only options. The swamp supports creatures that use poison, acid, camouflage, and rot. Platforms sag above dark liquid. Reeds conceal movement. In other regions, a pool may invite a pause. Here, the surface asks to be read before it is trusted. Bilewater teaches caution through color and sound, though even careful steps cannot remove the sense that the entire basin is receiving a wound that never closes. Grohl steals souls and turns them against the citadel. His revenge is grotesque, but its direction is understandable. He lives at the bottom of a system that sends consequences downward and holiness upward. The citadel keeps clean chambers, fountains, music, and white medical halls, while Bilewater holds what those achievements cost. Grohl answers extraction with another kind of extraction. The twisted bud reaches into this country as it does in Shellwood. Rooted curses ignore the borders printed on a map, passing beneath chapels and swamps through a network older than roads. Accepting the bud binds Hornet to an alternate chain of events, as though Bilewater can follow her all the way to the highest chamber and insist that the summit acknowledge what has been buried below. One stretch toward Pale Lake remains unexpectedly clear. The water there feels almost impossible after so much green poison and brown runoff. A remnant like this can be read two ways. It may be evidence of what the basin once was, or evidence that damage has limits, even when power pretends otherwise. Either reading makes the quiet shore precious. The putrefied ducks carry the same history through constructed channels. These aqueducts and waste passages were meant to move material away from the citadel. Their engineering is successful in the narrowest sense. Waste leaves the upper rooms. The failure appears only when the map is widened enough to include everyone downstream. Muck maggots thrive in the ducts, turning discarded matter into an ecosystem. Pipes bend around cavities where life has accepted the conditions provided. The area is grim, but it is not empty. Substances judged useless by the citadel become food, shelter, and danger elsewhere. Nothing truly disappears. It changes hands. The Huntress and Vogue belong to this edge of the kingdom, where tracking matters more than ceremony. Their knowledge comes from spore, appetite, and repeated passage through dangerous ground. Near the citadel, information is stored in cylinders and guarded vaults. In the ducts, it is stored in the body, which smell means safety, where a creature feeds, how water changes before something rises from it. Pale Lake eventually becomes the site of Fleetopia, when the caravan completes enough of its journey. The choice is wonderfully impractical. A community of rescued fleas settles beside clean water, hidden near a polluted drain, and decides that arrival can be celebrated there. Farloom's great powers construct monuments at the top of the world. The caravan makes a home in a place they reach together. Between Bilewater and Sinner's Road lies the mist, where the map stops behaving like a map. Fog fills a compact network of passages, yet distance and sequence no longer agree. Walking through one opening may return Hornet through another. Attempts to memorize the route fail because the route is not stable enough to reward memory. Wraiths drift within the haze, formed from silk expelled through the exhaust organ and shaped by the phantom's influence. They are the spiritual counterpart to the waste in Bylewater. Along with discarded matter, the citadel sheds remnants of will, grief, and haunting into the country below. The mist forms where those remnants gather thickly enough to interfere with space. The Needlin offers a way through. Certain pale flies respond to its music and guide Hornet along the correct sequence. The solution is gentle compared with the violence elsewhere. When sight and direction cannot be trusted, Hornet plays a melody and follows small living lights. Music, which the citadel uses to dominate the kingdom, becomes a private means of orientation. Defeating the phantom changes the region. The impossible loops settle into a direct corridor, as though the fog had been holding folded space in place. What remains is smaller and almost ordinary. That change reveals how much of the mist's size came from confusion. A frightened mind can cross the same few rooms for a very long time. Together, Sinner's Road, Bylewater, the ducts, and the mist form the underside of pilgrimage. They hold food production, imprisonment, industrial runoff, abandoned spirits, and the workers who make distant splendor possible. None appears in the citadel's hymns. All of it appears on the map. The Grand Gate stands where all those hidden costs are meant to leave the mind. Its scale turns the citadel from a distant shape into an immediate wall. Bells, carved shells, and golden fittings frame an entrance built to overwhelm people who have spent days approaching it. After the mud of Greymore and the sand of the steps, polished stone can look like proof that every hardship had a purpose. For many pilgrims, the gate was the object of an entire life. They answered the call, surrendered weapons, crossed regions that killed less fortunate travelers, and arrived expecting recognition. The gate offers no personal welcome. It is a sorting mechanism. Bodies collect before a structure too large to care which one has come farthest. The last judge protects the approach, but defeating her leaves the doors closed. Hornet must find another way into the city she was summoned to reach. That refusal keeps the citadel's first lesson consistent with the rest of Farloom. The path advertised by authority is rarely the path by which truth can be entered. Nileth's shrine near the gate belongs to an older agreement. When the citadel expanded beside Shellwood, it could not treat the forest's power as lightly as it treated ordinary pilgrims. The shrine records respect, negotiated with something capable of resisting. Faith in Farloom has always been shaped by power, even when its architecture speaks the language of humility. Once inside, the choral chambers replace the wind with music. Golden rooms rise around long shafts, balconies, platforms, and processional spaces. This is the citadel most pilgrims imagined, bright, ordered, crowded with servants and singers, every surface carrying the impression that work and worship have become the same graceful act. The choir maintained a constant song for Grandmother Silk. Its music travelled through the building and joined the machinery that kept her sleeping. Most singers did not know the full purpose. They believed they were praising the being above them. In practice, devotion was part of a restraint system built by the weavers who had once served her. That double meaning gives the chambers their peculiar tension. The song is sincere for those singing it, useful to the conductors who organize it, and dangerous to the mother who receives it. One melody can be prayer, labor, and chain at once. The truth depends on where a bug stands within the arrangement. New pilgrims were received and initiated here. Those who survived the outer journey entered a society with strict ranks and duties. Some might ascend into service. Others were redirected to work below or treatment in the Whitewood. Arrival did not end the pilgrimage. It converted movement into assignment. The architecture keeps the eyes traveling upward. Tall windows and suspended walkways make each level suggest another, finer one above it. That promise shapes behavior. A worker can tolerate the current station if the next balcony seems close enough. The citadel does not need every servant to be content. It needs them to believe discontent may be temporary. Bells organize distance inside the structure. Ventrica and bellways allow rapid travel between stations, turning the building's veins into a managed transit system. In the lower country, bells call pilgrims toward a dream. Inside the citadel, they keep bodies moving according to schedules. The same sound changes from invitation to infrastructure. The choral chambers also hold small lives that do not fit neatly into the institution's plan. Merchants, wandering figures, caretakers, and secretive residents make homes inside corners of grandeur. Their rooms keep the area from becoming an abstract palace. Somebody still worries about rosaries, dinner, gossip, and a locked door, while sacred music passes through the walls. Below the gold, the underworks maintain the practical body of the citadel. Pipes, furnaces, lifts, gears, and crowded passages support everything above. The underworks are not counted among the 7 formal districts, which is exactly the sort of distinction the upper city would make. A place can keep the whole structure alive and still be excluded from its official portrait. Workers descend into heat and machinery with little chance of genuine ascent. Even the benches can demand payment. Rest becomes another resource extracted from people who have already sold their time. Confession does not lead to absolution so much as a new sentence of labor. The system has learned to turn guilt into staffing. The air here is mechanical rather than musical, but the rhythms answer each other. Pistons keep time. Platforms move on fixed cycles. Metal strikes metal at intervals as dependable as a hymn. The upper halls may describe the citadel as a living song. The underworks reveal who oils its throat. The cauldron contains the claw line, an ability that lets Hornet attach silk to distant rings and pull herself across gaps. The tool suits the area. Workers have always crossed the citadel by grasping what the architecture provides, hauling themselves through spaces designed for function rather than comfort. Hornet takes that logic and makes it her own. Many routes from the underworks lead toward places the public face would prefer to keep separate. Waste channels, maintenance shafts, the cogwork core, and Whitewood service passages. This underside lets Hornet read the building without accepting its signs. A ceremonial door says one thing. The pipe behind it says where the contents truly go. Whitewood is the citadel's hospital, though the white walls contain ambitions far beyond healing. Here, physicians and attendants studied silk as a means of extending life, replacing failing functions, and making useful bodies endure. The institution treated mortality as a technical fault that might be corrected if enough living material were available. Procedures were performed without the mercy that a place of care should imply. Silk could be inserted into patients, binding tissue and will alike. Those who survived might gain longevity at a cost difficult to measure. Those who failed became waste, specimens, or proof that the next procedure needed refinement. Pain was absorbed into the language of progress. The old and sick arrived expecting treatment after their pilgrimage. Their vulnerability made them convenient. A bug who had crossed the kingdom for the citadel was unlikely to question the citadel when told that suffering formed part of salvation. Whitewood turned trust into consent, without ever asking whether the two were the same. Failed patients could be declared sinners and removed from the clean story of the ward. Bodies were cremated, recycled, or repurposed. Some lives fed silk flies, lights, and automata. The brightness of Whitewood depends upon processes that would stain its walls if they were allowed to remain visible. Yet individual healers do not all become identical villains. Some are curious, some obedient, some frightened, and some convinced that a breakthrough could justify the dead behind it. That variation makes the ward worse in a believable way. Cruel systems do not require everyone inside them to enjoy cruelty. They need enough people to narrow their attention to the task on the table. Hornet enters as both intruder and unusually valuable subject. Her body joins silk, lineage, and resistance in ways the Citadel has spent generations trying to understand. Whitewood looks at a person and sees a solution. That reduction echoes through the whole kingdom, where pilgrims become workers, prisoners become lessons, and ancient powers become resources. From the hospital, the Citadel's hidden mind opens into the whispering vaults. Shelves, chambers, cylinders, and guarded records preserve prayers, histories, research, and secrets. The air is quieter here, though never truly silent. Knowledge has its own hum when an institution stores enough of it. Psalm cylinders allow voices to survive their speakers. A prayer can be played again after the bug who offered it has vanished. This gives the archive an eerie intimacy. The dead do not return as complete people. A fragment of breath turns within a machine, repeating the portion judged worth preserving. Vault keepers manage access, protecting records from casual hands and inconvenient questions. An archive is often described as a place where history survives, but survival is selective. Somebody chooses what receives a shelf, what receives a lock, and what is quietly allowed to decay. The vaults preserve Farloom while also editing it. Cardinius belongs among these stored traces, his presence linking personal obsession to the Citadel's appetite for classification. Trobbio's stage creates a more theatrical corner of the vaults, reminding us that performance and preservation often overlap. An institution may hide truth in one chamber while displaying a polished version in the next. The pontiff came close to understanding the Citadel's true foundation. Discovery did not free him into a grand public revelation. He fell silent. That silence can be read as terror, complicity, defeat, or the realization that the officials most able to act were also the ones most invested in not hearing him. Hornet's passage through the vaults turns documents into roots. Locked knowledge becomes a physical obstacle, and hidden records point toward machinery, ancestry, and the mother above. She is not studying history for ceremony. She needs it because every lie in the building has been made architectural. The high halls contain the Citadel's governing class, where conductors, officials, guards, and refined residents occupy spaces where water runs clear and fountains soften the hard geometry. After bile water, Those fountains are impossible to see as innocent decoration. Clean water has climbed while poison flowed down. The Forum gives authority a place to speak itself into legitimacy. Decisions made here can travel through bells, workers, judges, and wardens until they seem like natural conditions in distant regions. Few bugs in Greymore will ever stand in the room where their labor is interpreted. Distance protects rulers from the texture of their choices. The Rosary Bank belongs comfortably in this district. Rosaries are currency, devotion, and portable proof of participation in the same order. Saving them inside a formal institution turns faith into account keeping. A pilgrim may arrive seeking transcendence and discover a teller behind a counter. The Claw Maidens defend the halls with discipline learned through training and rank. Their skill is real, even when the order directing it has decayed. Farloom is full of people whose virtues have been captured by a harmful purpose. Loyalty, courage, patience, and technical mastery do not become harmless merely because they are admirable in isolation. Water, gardens, and open chambers create a sense of relief after the underworks and whiteword. The relief is part of governance. Power prefers to meet visitors in a room where power looks calm. The noise, blood, smoke, and sewage remain several floors away, connected by shafts nobody mentions during formal business. The threefold melody passes through this part of the citadel's deeper design. Music opens mechanisms and ties Hornet's needle in to the work of the weavers. A tune learned in separated pieces asks her to cross social and physical boundaries the ruling order tries to keep apart. Its completed form carries knowledge no single district was meant to hold. Above and beside the halls lies the Memoriam, a museum of living places. The Citadel attempted to preserve samples of Farloom's ecosystems within controlled chambers. Moss, water, desert, flowers, insects, and regional structures appear as exhibits removed from the conditions that once gave them meaning. At first, preservation sounds merciful. Regions were failing under the haunting and the Citadel's expansion, so keeping fragments alive might seem like care. Yet the Memoriam also reveals possession. The institution damages a country, then collects a miniature of what is disappearing and calls the collection knowledge. The recreated environments include echoes of Moss Grotto, Shellwood, Greymore, the Far Fields, Carrack, the Marrow, and stranger habitats. Visitors can pass from one climate to another without making the journey through the lives attached to them. Rain becomes display, coral becomes specimen. The difficult distance between places is compressed into a curated walk. Creatures inside the exhibits sense that something is wrong. A habitat can reproduce temperature, plants, and food while still failing to become home. Home includes roots, seasons, dangers, neighbors, and memories that cannot be transferred like soil into a glass chamber. The Memoriam preserves surfaces better than relationships. Verdania exceeded the Citadel's control. What began as another contained environment grew beyond its assigned borders until the area had to be cut off. The old Green Kingdom refused to remain a specimen. Its escape from preservation carries a lovely irony. Life proved most alive when it stopped cooperating with the institution trying to save it. The present entrance to Verdania lies around the Greymore ruins rather than within a neat museum corridor. The Green Prince waits near the remains of a country tied to love and betrayal. His partner offered a body to the citadel under an agreement meant to preserve something of their people. That body became the foundation for the cogwork dancers, while Verdania itself was still lost. In Act 3, Hornet can enter lost Verdania as memory. The kingdom returns in green chambers filled with clover dancers and the motion of a culture that had not yet been reduced to ruins. The conjoined heart rests there, shaped by partnership as much as biology. Verdania's memory is beautiful because it restores context to what the citadel treated as material. Deeper inside the structure, the cogwork core provides the mechanical heart that keeps the song moving. Enormous cylinders, gears, tracks, and dancing constructs translate musical purpose into repeatable action. The choir may tire, machinery can be designed to continue. The core's motion is mesmerizing because every part seems to know its place. Platforms arrive, cogs engage, and metal bodies turn with exact timing. Order at this scale can look like beauty. Then one remembers what the order is doing, maintaining a kingdom-wide system built around a sleeping captive and the worship of those who do not know she is captive. The cogwork dancers bring Verdania's tragedy directly into the machine. Their grace was modeled through a sacrificed body, preserving movement after the life and agreement surrounding it were discarded. They dance perfectly because the citadel removed everything that might make the dance refuse. Architects occupy the upper rank of this mechanical culture. They built devices capable of outlasting intention, then trusted those devices to maintain the arrangement. The architect's melody gives Hornet another piece of access to the structure. Music becomes both blueprint and password. There is a lonely quality to machinery that has continued too long. Lubrication dries, operators vanish, and still the next tooth meets the next groove. The cogwork core cannot reconsider its purpose. Its faith is momentum. The root finally rises toward the cradle, highest chamber and hidden reason for everything beneath it. White flowers soften the approach. Silk fills the air. Lace waits near the place where Grandmother Silk lies contained, and the elegance of the summit contrasts sharply with the roads that paid for it. Grandmother Silk first entered Farloom as a power able to transform local Farlids into weavers. She told those new daughters that they came from her, binding creation to obedience through a lie. The weavers eventually learned enough to resist. They lulled her, enclosed her, and built the citadel as church and cage. Their revenge was never clean freedom. The citadel harvested the mother's silk and organized a civilization around keeping her asleep. Later generations inherited the ritual without inheriting the truth. A prison disguised as a sanctuary became a city, then a government, then the destination of countless pilgrims. Lace's connection to the mother makes the cradle personal as well as historical. She is guardian, daughter, rival, and someone whose identity has been written by the chamber she protects. Hornet arrives carrying her own complicated inheritance from Hallownest. Their meetings bring two daughters of powerful lineages together without reducing either to lineage alone. The white flowers around the summit look peaceful enough to conceal the oldest violence in the kingdom. That is the citadel's method distilled into one room. Beauty is real, so is the captivity beneath it. Farloom's tragedy comes from the insistence that only one of those truths may be spoken at a time. When the cradle's order breaks, liberation arrives tangled with collapse. The restraints holding Grandmother Silk, the songs guiding the haunted, and the institutions built around them all begin to fail together. Removing a terrible center cannot instantly teach every dependent system how to live without it. Act 3 begins inside that aftermath. The change reaches every altitude. The cradle is damaged, the citadel's careful divisions loosen, and creatures touched by the old power appear where earlier routes had seemed secure. Belhart loses more of its skyline. Survivors gather in the marrow. Familiar roads remain recognizable, yet their purposes have shifted. A place once crossed on the way upward may now be crossed to rescue somebody, recover an old heart, or find a route down. This return across Farloom is not a simple repetition of the first journey. Hornet has changed physically through tools and abilities, while the kingdom has changed historically around her. The same wall that once forced a detour can now be climbed. The same sealed door may answer the Needlin. The same quiet ruin may open into memory. Geography becomes a conversation between what Hornet has learned and what the land is finally willing to reveal. Bone Bottom, which began as a modest place for exhausted pilgrims, now belongs to a wider network of survival. Its wish wall has already shown how needs can be shared without a grand authority. In the crisis after the cradle, that humble model looks wiser than the citadel's promise. The town never claimed to cure Farloom. It kept a fire, recorded requests, and let small acts accumulate. The Marrow's camp carries the same idea into harsher ground. Bugs from separated walks of life gather among bones because open catastrophe has made rank less useful than food, shelter, and information. The giant remains no longer seem like a monument only to death. Their cavities protect those still alive. Deep docks also changes meaning once the diving bell is ready. Earlier, the district was a horizontal obstacle of heat and iron on the road toward Belhart. Now its deepest machinery points vertically into a region omitted from every ordinary pilgrimage. The bell was built for descent, and its survival suggests that somebody always knew there was more beneath the forge than lava and rock. Elsewhere, recovered hearts lead Hornet into versions of places that the present can no longer supply. Shellwood opens toward Nyleth's remembered strength. Karak fills again with the order of its vanished water. Verdania gathers itself from ruin into green motion. These are not neutral recordings. They are living memories shaped around the powers that held each region together. The contrast among them matters. Nyleth's forest grew through protection and pollen. Karak organized itself under a king whose resistance did not erase his tyranny. Verdania carried partnership, dance, and a bargain that ended in betrayal. Farloom had no single golden age. Its older worlds were different from one another, and some contained cruelties of their own. Remembering them still breaks the citadel's monopoly over history. The upper city reduced cultures to displays in the memoriam, where selected plants and creatures could be labeled without preserving self-rule. The hearts restore a more dangerous kind of past, one capable of judging the present rather than decorating it. There is another place that exists almost entirely as remembered ground. Red memory does not belong to Farloom in the ordinary geographic sense. It forms from Hornet's own past after she seeks what is needed for the Everbloom. The map turns red, sound slows, and locations from Hallow Nest return as fragments held inside her. The Weaver's Den appears first as a place of ancestry. Hornet carries silk in her body, inherited through a people who crossed kingdoms, served powers, discovered lies, and fled the consequences of resistance. In memory, those facts are no longer inscriptions found in somebody else's ruin. They are rooms her body remembers. Distant village brings Hera close again. Hornet's mother ruled the spiders of Deep Nest and entered a bargain with the Pale King so Hornet could be born. That agreement tied a daughter's life to the ceiling of the Radiance. The village is therefore both home and evidence of a cost decided before Hornet could choose anything. Hera's memory need not become a complete explanation of their relationship. Parents remain partly unknowable even in ordinary lives, and Hornet's circumstances leave more distance than most. What survives is presence, a mask, a chamber, a promise, and the knowledge that love existed inside, arrangements larger than either mother or daughter. The hive brings Vesper and another form of female rule into the memory. Its golden chambers contrast with the citadel's gold because the hive grew around a distinct people rather than a universal call demanding outsiders climb toward it. Hornet's ties to Vesper suggest training, kinship, or influence that helped form the warrior who later guarded Hallownest's ruins. White Palace carries the Pale King's absence. Its brightness, thorns, and impossible architecture belong to a father whose plans shaped Hornet even when his affection did not. He treated lineage as one more component in the attempt to contain a god. The palace in memory is less a family home than the beautiful machinery of somebody else's design. The White Lady adds a quieter presence. She is not Hornet's mother, yet she belongs to the royal family into which Hornet was born from the side. Hallownest's kinships are tangled by vows, vessels, bargains, and duties. Red Memory does not untangle them. It lets their emotional weight occupy physical rooms. Because the area is made from Hornet's recollection, movement through it feels inward even when she leaps across visible platforms. Places change without the long connective roads found in Farloom. Memory can place a mother beside a teacher, a palace beside a den, because emotional distance ignores miles. The slowed form of Hornet's theme helps the area feel suspended outside ordinary urgency. A melody associated with action turns reflective without losing its identity. Hornet remains herself at every tempo. The memory does not reveal a hidden, softer person beneath the warrior. It shows softness and force as parts of the same life. Once this passage has served its purpose, Red Memory cannot be entered in the same way again. That limit gives it the shape of an experience rather than a museum. Some returns happen once. Afterwards, what remains is the change they made in the person who returned. Far below Deep Docks, the diving bell descends into the abyss. Heat gives way to blackness, and the industrial sound above recedes until Farloom's oldest depth begins to speak through water, stone, and distant movement. The abyss is so large that familiar ideas of a room or corridor stop being useful. Fossil shells rest in the darkness, remnants of lives whose scale belongs to another age. Black roots pass through caverns like veins belonging to the world itself. A sea of void gathers below, absorbing light without becoming empty. The descent feels less like entering a secret basement and more like reaching the material under history. Long before the Citadel, an ancient civilization encountered the void and worshipped it. Their structures and traces suggest that the substance was understood as more than darkness. It could erase, unite, animate, answer, or consume depending on the form imposed upon it. Later kingdoms inherited fragments of that knowledge and repeated the old temptation to use what they could not fully define. The Weavers built Weaver Nest Absalom in the abyss to study it. Their presence here expands the map of their ambition. Atla was a workshop among moss and burial. Khan hid in the wormways. Mount Fay held their attempt to commune with the Faefaun. Absalom reached downward toward void. The weavers did not belong to one environment because their questions crossed the whole kingdom. Their research may also explain why the Citadel's designers understood the danger beneath them. A civilization built to contain Grandmother Silk was raised above another power capable of opposing Silk at its deepest level. The height of the cradle and depth of the abyss form a vertical argument running through Farloom. Hornet gains silk soar in these depths, a movement that sends her upward with force drawn through her own silk. It is fitting that the last great ascent begins in the lowest place. Throughout the journey, the Citadel has claimed upward movement as proof of obedience. Here, Hornet learns to rise from a source the Citadel feared and concealed. The Everbloom protects her in the abyss. It carries the restored powers of old regions without reproducing their politics. Forest, coral, and joined life contribute to something able to meet the void without immediately dissolving. Farloom's discarded histories become protection where its central institution has none left to offer. The void is connected to Hallownest through the night, the siblings, and the vast force that answered the radiance. Hornet cannot enter the abyss as a stranger. Her half-siblings were made through the Pale King's use of void, discarded in an attempt to create a perfectly empty vessel. Their silent history lies beneath her own story, even when this abyss belongs to another kingdom. Lost Lace waits within the catastrophe. The name captures what the abyss has done. Identity has been pulled away from the person Hornet knew, leaving something submerged in a force larger than grief or loyalty. Reaching her requires more than defeating a creature in darkness. It requires carrying enough of the kingdom's recovered life into the place where distinctions are hardest to preserve. The encounter joins the two deepest threads of the journey. Silk binds, remembers, performs, and controls. Void erases boundaries, gathers what was cast away, and resists the bright powers that try to shape minds. Hornet stands between them without belonging wholly to either. Her strength comes from refusing the simple answer that one substance must become master of the other. When the abyss is understood as an area rather than a final spectacle, its details become important. The long approach, the abandoned weaver nest, the enormous shells, and the black growths all give time for scale to settle. A final chamber alone could provide danger. The surrounding country provides age. The map of Farloom now reaches from the Moss Grotto's clear pool to a sea that seems to contain night itself. Between them lie farms, prisons, deserts, archives, workshops, villages, and memories. The route is enormous, but its extremes are connected. Moss grows over weaver machinery in the first region. Weaver machinery studies void in the last. The beginning was already holding a small piece of the ending. That connection changes the way Moss Grotto looks on a return visit. Its water is still calm, and the chapel maid still belongs to an old devotion abandoned by most of the kingdom. Yet the moss around Atla no longer seems like simple overgrowth. It is one answer to fallen power. Life has covered the machine without asking permission from its makers. Bone Bottom also feels different after the Citadel. Its rough homes lack gold, but their doors open directly onto the needs of neighbors. The Wish Wall contains no claim to universal wisdom. It admits that one person is missing a thing another person may be able to find. That modest exchange survives comparison with every grand promise above it. The marrow's bones gain another scale after the fossils of the abyss. Farloom has been built among remains at every depth. Some skeletons become roads, others landmarks, and others mysteries too large to name. Civilization occupies the temporary space between ancient deaths without ever becoming as permanent as its rulers imagine. Deep docks can no longer be seen only as a forge once its diving bell has opened the descent. The district sits between technologies, furnaces that arm and supply the present, and a vessel that reaches a buried past. Workers striking metal above may never know that an ancient black sea lies beneath their feet. Hunter's March, meanwhile, keeps the memory of people who resisted incorporation. The Scar did not need a Citadel archive to prove they existed. Their traps, songs, weapons, and living descendants carried that proof. Carmelita's recovered voice in Act 3 joins the old hearts without becoming another exhibit behind glass. The far fields remain a broad breath between harder regions. Updrafts that once taught Hornet to float now feel like early preparation for the mountain cloak and silk saw. Farloom teaches movement gradually through its terrain. Before Hornet can cross an impossible final depth, she learns to trust a warm current over grass. Greymoor's reign continues regardless of what happens at the cradle. Workers may be freed, missing, or changed, but the size of the moor prevents any single victory from drying its fields. This persistence gives the outer world dignity. It does not exist solely to react to events in a palace. Wisp Thicket's fire holds a more troubling independence. The faith there was never simply the Citadel's lesser copy. Its worshippers found another transforming power and gave themselves to it. Ending one kingdom-wide control does not make every local belief gentle. Freedom permits strange choices as well as wise ones. Bellheart remains the emotional center because it is neither the beginning nor the summit. It is a place in between, close enough to receive pilgrims and far enough from the Citadel to grow its own routines. Hornet's Bell Home gives the whole map a point of return that belongs to ordinary life. Shelwood shows what such return can mean across centuries. Nyleth's protection faded, but ponds, roots, hunters, and dangerous flowers continued arranging themselves without a replacement ruler. The forest is wounded and hostile in places, yet it has not become a dead monument to its former god. The blasted steppes and sands of Karak are harder to recover. Water cannot be restored by defeating the last judge. Coral memory cannot refill the present riverbed. Some areas keep consequences that no ending can politely remove. Their permanence prevents hope from becoming amnesia. Mount Fay offers another kind of permanence. Its cold existed before the Citadel and remains after the Citadel's secrets are known. The mountain was used by weavers, crossed by Hornet, and inhabited by the Mask Maker, but it never becomes property in the same total way as the Coral Chambers. Snow covers every claim eventually. The slab cannot lose its history when its cells open. A prison may be emptied while the habits that built it survive in language, law, and fear. Calling the place forgiveness does not become true after liberation. The name remains a warning about how easily mercy can be used to decorate control. Sinner's Road and Bilewater make repair equally difficult. They are working environments formed through generations of exploitation and contamination. Clear water in one hidden lake does not cleanse the whole basin. The Stilkin's future requires more than the Citadel ceasing to pour fresh poison. It requires time the story cannot skip on their behalf. The mist, by contrast, can change dramatically when the phantom is gone. Its looping corridors settle. This difference among regions is important. Damage does not follow one rule. A curse may lift in a moment, a forest may regrow over decades, and a dried kingdom may never see its river again. Within the citadel, the end of the great song leaves rooms built for functions that no longer make sense. What is a choral chamber without the command to sing? What is Whitewood after its promise of perfect life has failed? What does a vault keeper protect when the institution that classified truth has broken open? The people who remain must answer through use. A ceremonial hall can become shelter. An archive can be read rather than guarded. Machinery can be stopped, repaired, or redirected. Buildings do not carry one moral nature forever, though their design makes some futures easier than others. The memoriam poses the hardest question. Its living collections were gathered through arrogance, but the creatures inside still need care. Simply breaking every enclosure might free some and kill others. The old institution's wrongdoing creates responsibilities for those who inherit its cages. Good intentions cannot replace knowledge here. Verdania's escape offers one answer, though not a universal one. Life can exceed the frame placed around it. The Green Kingdom invaded the boundaries of its exhibit and preserved a form of itself through disobedience. Its eventual ruin does not make that resistance meaningless. For a time, the specimen became a country again. The Cogwork core presents the opposite problem. Machines continue exactly because they cannot exceed their frame. A gear does not know the mother has awakened or the choir has scattered. Somebody must decide whether to halt it. Momentum looks neutral only to those spared from its effects. At the damaged cradle, the white flowers survive beside broken structures. Their softness no longer hides a perfectly maintained secret. Lace's history, the mother's captivity, and the weaver's rebellion have entered the open. Revelation does not make the summit ugly. It makes its beauty harder to misuse. Seen all at once, Farloom is not arranged as a simple ladder from humble earth to holy sky. Roads branch, curl underneath one another, hide old kingdoms, and open into memories. The Citadel tried to make every route point toward itself. The complete map refuses. Chakra's work quietly supports that refusal. Every purchased section turns overwhelming terrain into something a traveler can compare, revisit, and question. A map does not defeat a ruler, but it weakens the ruler's claim to be the only source of direction. Once all the paths are visible, the official pilgrimage becomes one route among many. Benches do similar work on a smaller scale. They are pauses, distributed across climates and social classes. A bench in a grand hall and a bench in a wet cave offer the same basic mercy. Stop here, gather yourself, begin again when ready. Some charge rosaries or conceal traps, but the honest ones create a humble network of rest across a kingdom obsessed with labor. Bellways shorten the country after their stations are opened, yet the first long crossings remain part of how each connection is understood. Riding inside the Bell Beast later does not erase the wind that once had to be fought on foot. Fast travel becomes comforting because slowness came first. The fleas understand travel in their own comic fashion. Rescuing them across remote corners gradually fills a caravan that can outgrow one resting site and seek another. Their final community near Pale Lake makes the map feel inhabited by accumulated kindness. Each rescue is tiny, but the destination visibly contains them all. Wishes spread that same accumulation through towns and camps. A request posted in Bone Bottom may lead to Shellwood, the docks, or a forgotten chamber inside the citadel. The reward matters less than the line drawn between people who might otherwise remain isolated dots. Farloom's healthiest network is built from errands nobody is forced to accept. The kingdom's names carry history even when the facts have been forgotten. The marrow remembers a body. Bylewater remembers pollution so thoroughly that corruption has replaced the older identity. Whitewood remembers cleanliness while hiding blood. The cradle describes tenderness around a captive god. Each name tells the truth slantwise. Color tells another version. Green moss holds the beginning. Red thorns guard the scar. Grey rain covers the moor. Gold fills the citadel. White marks its medicine and summit, and black waits beneath the whole arrangement. These colors are not tidy moral labels. Green can conceal teeth, gold can accompany sincere music, and black can contain rescue as well as terror. Sound joins regions that architecture keeps separate. Bells travel from village vanes to transit stations. Needle-in notes wake mechanisms and guide flies through fog. Scar song carries resistance. The choir sustains a prison without knowing it. Cog cylinders repeat what living performers began. Farloom's map can be heard almost as clearly as it can be seen. Silence has geography too. Mount Fay quiets ordinary combat under wind and cold. The vaults soften voices around guarded knowledge. Red memory slows familiar music into reflection. The abyss removes the busy sounds of civilization until each movement seems exposed against enormous dark. Rest arrives differently in each silence. That variety keeps the journey from becoming a catalogue of scenery. Areas alter what movement, safety, faith, and home mean. A wall in Shellwood invites climbing once Kilal's binding is found. A wall in the slab is confinement. A wall in the memoriam separates a creature from the world being imitated for it. Stone receives its meaning from the life arranged around it. Water changes just as often. It heals the eye in Moss Grotto, vanishes from Karak, falls endlessly over Greymoor, turns poisonous in Bylewater, becomes curated display in the memoriam, and gathers as void at the bottom of the abyss. Following water alone would tell much of Farloom's history. So would following work. Moss gatherers, pond hunters, forge workers, silk harvesters, roach keepers, singers, doctors, archivists, and mechanics keep the kingdom functioning. The citadel prefers the story of a holy ascent, but ordinary labor connects more regions than faith ever did. And home appears wherever that labor is briefly allowed to stop. A bed in Bellheart, a fire in Bone Bottom, an inn in Greymoor, a caravan at Pale Lake, or a survivor camp inside the Marrow can hold more tenderness than the grandest chamber above. None is perfectly safe. That is why the shelter matters. The borders between those homes and hazards deserve one last slow look, because Farloom rarely announces a new area with a clean doorway. Moss Grotto thins into Bone Bottom through passages where green life gives way to worked shell. The change happens underfoot before it appears on a map. By the time the settlement is visible, the road has already prepared the eye for habitation. From Bone Bottom into the Marrow, domestic scale gives way to anatomy. Walls widen around bones too large to belong to anyone the town could have known. This threshold makes the first journey feel like departure in a true sense. Hornet is no longer moving between rooms around a refuge. She has entered the remains from which much of the lower kingdom takes its shape. The entrance to deep docks replaces pale bone with hot metal. Color warms, air thickens, and manufactured danger overtakes the burrowing life of the marrow. A boundary like this tells its story without a sign. Somebody built the world ahead, supplied it, and expected workers to tolerate its heat. Wormways resist such clarity. Their tunnels touch several neighboring regions through routes that feel discovered rather than declared. A burrow can emerge near moss, shell, or open road, and the border belongs to whichever creature dug last. These connections make the official routes look temporary. Farloom was crossed underground before its authorities laid ceremonial roads above. Hunter's March narrows passage through thorns and traps before Farfield suddenly gives the air room to move. The two areas sharpen each other. The march trains the body to expect every surface to punish haste. The fields then ask for a leap into open space. Caution has to loosen into trust. Greymore receives that leap with rain. Wind over grass becomes weather over worked land, and isolated platforms become roads among farms, towers, and an inn. The transition suggests settlement before any resident speaks. Paths grow broader because more feet must use them. Approaching Bellheart, bells begin replacing rain as the dominant rhythm. The moor's scattered labour gathers around a vane where homes can cluster. This is why the town feels earned rather than placed. Its materials, food, visitors, and dangers have all been visible on the roads leading to it. Shellwood branches away in living curves, while the blasted steps strip those curves down to exposed ascent. Bellheart sits between forest and desert as a hinge. One exit leads into tangled abundance. The other leads toward absence, judgment, and a gate. Standing in town, a traveller can almost feel the two futures pulling in opposite directions. Mount Fay and the slab share cold without sharing purpose. On the mountain, frost comes from altitude and asks only whether a body can survive it. At the prison, the same cold has been incorporated into punishment. Crossing between them changes weather into policy without changing the temperature. Sinner's Road sinks from the open moor into enclosed production. Cages appear, clean rain turns to muck, and food becomes difficult to separate from captivity. Farther on, Bylewater widens the filth into a whole environment. The road is a process. The swamp is the accumulated result. The mist offers the least dependable border of all. A step taken away from Sinner's Road may refuse to complete its departure. Fog returns Hornet to a passage she thought she had left, making the threshold itself part of the trap. Only after the phantom falls can one area end where the next begins. Putrefied ducks join Bylewater to the citadel through function rather than appearance. A pipe is a sentence with direction. Read it backward, and it points from the poisoned basin toward the rooms that produced the poison. The route lets Hornet follow consequence to source. Entry into the choral chambers reverses almost every sensation below. Mud becomes polished floor, sour water becomes golden light, and rough local noises become coordinated song. The sudden beauty is not false. Its placement is the deception. The citadel encourages arrivals to treat contrast as proof of moral elevation rather than proof that resources have been concentrated. Internal borders keep that concentration organized. A servant can hear music above while descending toward the underworks. A whiteward patient may be close to an archive containing the real history of the treatment, and still never see it. Flaws and locked doors prevent knowledge from traveling as effectively as they prevent bodies from traveling. The passage into the memoriam crosses an especially strange boundary. It leaves the citadel without leaving its walls. Moss, desert, and forest return as controlled impressions, allowing officials to visit the country without entering the conditions their institution changed. It is tourism, research, remembrance, and possession folded into the same corridor. Moving from the core toward the cradle changes repetition into stillness. Gears and cylinders perform below, while flowers wait above. The machinery has been carrying the summit's secret for so long that silence seems almost louder than the mechanisms. The final threshold leads from a system to the captive reason the system exists. The diving bell creates a border in motion. Hornet enters it at the docks, and the vessel carries her downward through distance that cannot be crossed by an ordinary door. During the descent, there is no path to correct and no enemy to answer. The kingdom simply grows heavier overhead. Arrival in the abyss makes every upper border seem local. The difference between town and forest, prison and mountain, or ward and archive belongs to the thin inhabited world above. At the bottom, void passes beneath all those distinctions. It is not impressed by the labels on Chakra's map. Red memory crosses in the opposite direction. Instead of going physically below Farloom, Hornet moves inward and far away. Hallownest enters the journey without a road connecting the kingdoms. This is the one border no cartographer could mark before she crossed it, because it existed inside the traveler. These thresholds explain why a complete map never turns Farloom into a solved object. Chakra can draw chambers, benches, stations, and openings. She cannot draw the exact moment when a warm road begins to feel hostile, when a ruin becomes personal, or when a remembered room feels closer than the stone under Hornet's feet. Nor can a map hold time cleanly. Present Shellwood and remembered Shellwood occupy the same position while containing different worlds. Karak is both dune and river. Verdania is ruin, exhibit, rebellion, and living recollection depending on when and how it is entered. Red memory has no stable present at all. What the map can do is preserve relation. It shows that Whitewood stands above poisoned water, that Bellheart depends on roads through forest and moor, and that the cradle rises over an abyss its worshippers were taught to ignore. Relation turns scattered facts into accountability. It also leaves room for affection. The distance between Bone Bottom and Pale Lake can measure the flea's long search for home. The line from Moss Grotto to Bellheart can trace Hornet's movement from captive stranger to resident with a key. A route is never only geometry after somebody has lived along it. Even the empty spaces around Chakra's drawings carry a quiet honesty. They admit that a kingdom extends beyond the routes one traveler happened to survive. Burrows continue behind collapsed walls. Buildings contain locked rooms with no useful treasure. Water passes under stone without offering a place to stand. Completeness does not require pretending that every inch has yielded its secret. The finished map is valuable because it knows the difference between a known border and the end of the world. Now the map can fold along its old creases. Karak's dry river settles beside Shellwood's pond. The narrow wormways rest under the open far fields. Whitewood closes beside Bylewater, its bright rooms finally unable to deny the swamp below. Red memory slips between Hallownest and Farloom, where no printed border could hold it. Back in the Bellheart Bell home, the window is still dark. Perhaps a bell moves somewhere in the vane, gently enough that the room receives only the lowest part of its sound. The key is inside. The road, for once, is outside. Hornet has crossed every kind of place this kingdom could place before her. A birthplace that was not hers. A pilgrimage she did not choose. Towns worth saving. Old powers worth questioning. And depths from which another person still had to be brought home. None of those places explains her alone. Together, they reveal the choices she kept making inside inherited worlds. Farloom can remain spread across the mind without demanding another climb tonight. Moss may keep growing over Atla. Rain may continue across Greymore. The warm machinery of deep docks can fade beneath the colder air of Mount Fay, and the last white flower at the cradle can close while darkness rests below it. The bells do not need an answer now. Let the paths grow quiet, let the silk loosen from the map, and let every distant area return to its own weather. There will be time for roads again. For now, Bellheart keeps one small room, one bed, and one closed door against the night. Good night.